In a quiet New York coffee shop, a 30-year-old second-grade teacher named Isabella Hayes deliberately dressed like she didn't care. Old hoodie, stained jeans, messy hair, no makeup, hoping to scare off yet another disappointing blind date. But when a sharply dressed stranger walked in, looked straight at her, and smiled like he'd finally found exactly who he was looking for. Everything she thought she knew about love, money, and trust was about to change forever. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe. A cold February rain fell softly on the windows of the small coffee shop in Greenwich Village. The kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller, quieter, more honest. Inside, the air smelled of cinnamon and dark roast, and the low hum of conversation mixed with the occasional clink of porcelain. Isabella Hayes sat alone in the corner booth, 30 years old, a second-grade teacher who had learned too much too soon about trust. Her brown hair was pulled into a careless knot, strands escaping like they were tired of being held. She wore the same gray hoodie she had worn through 3 winters. Faded, soft at the elbows, a small coffee stain near the cuff from a morning she could barely remember. Dark jeans, scuffed sneakers, no makeup. She had chosen every piece deliberately, like armor. 3 years earlier, her fiancé had taken her savings, her plans, her belief in promises, and left without a backward glance. The debt still sat on her credit report like a scar. So she came to this blind date dressed to repel, to test, to prove once more that no one would stay when they saw the truth. Her fingers traced the rim of an untouched chai latte. She glanced at her phone. 5 minutes late. Good, maybe he wouldn't show. The bell above the door chimed. A man stepped in, shaking rain from the shoulders of a charcoal wool coat. He was tall, perhaps 40, black hair neatly trimmed with the faintest threads of silver at the temples, clean-shaven, strong jaw, eyes the color of deep water. His suit beneath the coat was the kind that cost more than Isabella made in 3 months, yet he wore it the way another man might wear a favorite sweater, without arrogance. He scanned the room, unhurried, then his gaze settled on her. A small, genuine smile touched his mouth as though he had recognized something he had been looking for. He crossed the floor and stopped at her table. Isabella? His voice was low, warm, carrying the faint rasp of someone who had spent too many nights speaking in boardrooms or too many mornings with strong coffee. She nodded, throat suddenly dry. Yes, Lucas Bennett. He slid into the seat opposite her, coat draped over the back of the chair. Madison said you'd be in the corner. He did not comment on her clothes. Not a flicker of surprise or judgment crossed his face. Instead, he asked about the children she taught. Second graders, she told him, full of questions and small, fierce opinions. He listened as though every word mattered. She found herself talking about a boy named Mateo who had just learned to tie his shoes and insisted on showing her every morning. Lucas smiled, asked what Mateo's favorite color was. Blue, she said, like the sky after rain. They spoke for nearly an hour. He told her he liked true crime podcasts, too, the ones that unfold slowly like real life. She laughed, quietly, surprised at the sound of it in her own ears. When she asked about his work, he answered simply, technology, mostly helping companies run better. Nothing flashy, nothing to boast about. Yet there was a steadiness in the way he spoke, a man who had seen enough of the world to know what was rare. The barista came by with fresh water. Lucas thanked her by name. Clara, the tag read, and Isabella noticed. Small things, kindness in the ordinary. Then he leaned forward slightly. I should tell you something. Her stomach tightened. Here it comes, she thought, the polite exit. I asked Madison not to tell you who I am. Not exactly. He paused, eyes steady on hers. I'm her boss, at Bennett Dynamics. The name landed like a stone in still water. Bennett Dynamics. Even Isabella, who avoided financial news, knew the company. Headlines about innovation, billions in value. A man named Lucas Bennett, who rarely appeared in photographs. She looked at him again. Really looked. The suit. The quiet confidence. The way he had chosen this plain coffee shop instead of some polished lounge downtown. She swallowed. So this is... what? A test? No, he said softly. It's the opposite. I've spent years being looked at for what I own instead of who I am. I wanted one conversation where money didn't sit between us. Silence settled. Rain tapped the window. Isabella felt the old instinct rise. To stand, to leave, to protect the small life she had rebuilt brick by careful brick. But something in his gaze held her. Not pleading, not demanding, just waiting. Honest. She exhaled slowly. I dressed like this on purpose, she admitted, to see if you'd stay. He nodded once. I'm still here. The words hung between them, simple and true. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, for the first time in 3 long years, Isabella felt the tiniest crack in the wall she had built around her heart. Not a collapse, just a breath. A possibility. The rain had softened to a mist by the time they stepped out of the coffee shop, the streetlights catching in small puddles like scattered coins. The air smelled of wet pavement and distant wood smoke. Isabella pulled her hoodie tighter, the hood shadowing her face, but she did not hurry away. They walked a few blocks in silence at first, the kind of quiet that is not empty but thoughtful. Lucas matched her pace, hands in his coat pockets. He was not trying to impress her with long strides or grand gestures. He simply walked beside her, as though this ordinary sidewalk was enough. Inside, Isabella felt the old walls shift. Just a fraction. She had expected him to leave when she admitted the hoodie was a test. Most men did. They saw the mess, the caution, and turned. But Lucas had stayed. Not out of pity, not out of obligation. He had stayed because he wanted to. That simple fact settled in her chest like a stone smoothed by years in a riverbed. She glanced at him sideways. His profile was calm, the silver at his temples catching the light. He carried the weight of money and expectation, yet he moved without haste, without the restlessness she had seen in other successful men. Perhaps he had learned, as she had, that rushing only made the heart ache more. They stopped at a small park bench under a bare maple. No one else was around. The mist drifted like breath. Lucas spoke first, voice low enough that she had to lean in slightly. I've been on the other side of this, he said. Women who smiled wider when they heard the company name, who asked about private jets before they asked about my day. He paused, looking at the wet leaves on the ground. It hollows you out after a while. Makes you wonder if anyone sees past the balance sheet. Isabella listened. His words were not bitter. They were weary, like a man who had carried a heavy load for too long and finally set it down. She felt the echo in her own chest, the echo of betrayal, of promises turned to dust. She drew a slow breath. My fiancé, he promised me things too. Her voice was quiet, almost lost in the mist. He said he'd help me start a little creative class for kids who don't get art at home. Kids like some of my second graders, ones who come to school hungry for color, for something beautiful. I believed him. I signed papers without reading them closely enough. Then he was gone, and the debt was mine. The dream, just gone. She stared at her hands. They were small, calloused from glue sticks and playground gravel. I stopped believing in promises after that, so I started testing people instead. Lucas nodded once. No rush to fill the silence. No false comfort. Just a nod, as though he understood that some wounds need air before they can heal. They sat there longer than either expected. She told him about Mateo again, how the boy had drawn her a picture of a blue whale last week, bigger than the paper itself. Lucas smiled, a real one, the kind that reaches the eyes. He told her about a project his company had quietly funded, after-school tech labs in under-resourced schools, places where kids could build things and feel capable. Not charity, he said, just giving back what the world gave me. She looked at him then, really looked. There was no performance in his face, only a man who had been hurt and had chosen kindness anyway. The mist thickened, streetlights blurred. Isabella felt something loosen inside her, a knot she had carried so long she forgot its shape. She was not ready to trust fully, not yet, but she was ready to try one more time. I'll meet you again, she said at last. At the book fair next weekend, Used books only. Nothing fancy. Lucas smiled, small and steady. I'll be there. They parted under the maple. She walked home alone, the rain now just a whisper on her hood. For the first time in 3 years, the night did not feel quite so heavy. Not a promise, not yet. But a door, cracked open. Enough light to see by. Sunlight filtered through the high windows of the old library annex, turning dust motes into soft gold. The book fair smelled of aged paper, faint vanilla from old bindings, and the quiet promise of stories waiting to be found. Tables groaned under stacks of paperbacks and hardcovers, the air still and warm, like a room that had held secrets for decades. Isabella arrived early, her dark jeans clean for once, a cream sweater soft against her skin, hair loose and brushed. She moved between the tables with careful fingers, pulling out a worn Agatha Christie, then a history of shipwrecks. Her heart beat a little faster than usual, not from nerves exactly, but from the unfamiliar feeling of anticipation. She had spent the week replaying their last conversation, the way Lucas had listened without hurry, the way he had not flinched when she spoke of debt and broken dreams. She told herself it was foolish to hope, yet here she was looking for him in the crowd. He found her first, near a table of mysteries. Lucas wore jeans and a dark green Henley shirt, sleeves pushed to the elbows, revealing forearms that spoke of quiet strength rather than show. No suit today. No trace of the boardroom. Just a man in his late 30s, hair slightly tousled by the wind outside, eyes steady and kind. He carried 2 paper cups of coffee, one black, one chai. You came, he said simply. She smiled, small but real. I said I would. They wandered the aisles together, shoulders brushing now and then. He picked up a book on the Titanic, thumbed the pages gently, told her his grandfather had sailed on smaller ships, and always said the sea taught humility. She showed him a battered copy of And Then There Were None, explained how her grandmother had read it to her on rainy afternoons, teaching her to notice what people did not say. Their voices stayed low, respectful of the hush around them. The hours slipped away like pages turning. Near the back, away from the main crowd, Lucas stopped. He looked at her directly. I need to be honest, he said. My name is Lucas Bennett. I own Bennett Dynamics. It's a big company. More money than most people ever see. Isabella felt the floor tilt. She had guessed something like this, but hearing it aloud was different. The gap between them widened in an instant. Her one-bedroom apartment, her secondhand books, her careful budget against his world of headlines and boardrooms. She stepped back half a pace. He did not chase the distance. He simply waited. I've had women stay for the name on the buildings, he continued. One sold our private conversations to reporters. Tabloids called it Billionaire betrayal. I learned to hide who I was. Until Madison said there was someone real. Someone who wouldn't care about the rest. Isabella looked down at the book in her hands. The cover was worn, the spine cracked, like her trust. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. You live in a different world. I don't want a different world, he answered. I want one where I'm just Lucas, and you're just Isabella. She met his eyes. There was no pleading there, only quiet truth. The same truth that had kept him sitting across from her in that coffee shop when she looked like she had nothing to offer. She exhaled slowly. If we do this, we split everything. No paying for me, no gifts that feel like charity. And we go slow. Very slow. Lucas nodded once. Agreed. They bought their books, hers a mystery, his a maritime history, and stepped outside. The afternoon light had softened. Later, alone in her apartment, the phone rang. Madison's name lit the screen. I should have told you sooner, Madison said, voice tight. Lucas asked me to keep quiet, but I went along with it because I knew you'd run if you heard Billionaire. After what Jeremy did, I didn't want you hurt again. Isabella sat on the edge of her bed. He turned down women with money. Real money. You didn't think to mention that? A pause. I didn't want you to think you were just another test. The words stung. Isabella felt the old doubt rise like cold water. Was she an experiment? A safe choice because she had nothing to take? But Madison's voice softened. Don't let the past steal this, Isabella. He's not Jeremy, and you're not the woman who got left behind anymore. The call ended. Isabella stared at the wall. The room was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. She thought of Lucas's hands on the book fair table, steady, unhurried. She thought of the way he had looked at her in the coffee shop and seen her. Not the hoodie, not the caution. She did not have answers. Not yet. But she felt the smallest shift inside, like a window opened after a long winter. Not wide, just enough for air. Enough for possibility. Late March brought a raw wind off the Hudson, rattling the windows of Isabella's classroom after the children had gone home. The room smelled of crayons, drying paint, and the faint chalk dust that never quite settled. Afternoon light slanted across the small desks, turning construction paper into soft amber. Isabella sat at her teacher's desk, grading simple sentences about spring. Her hands trembled slightly. For weeks, she and Lucas had met quietly. Walks in the park, coffee in out-of-the-way places, evenings listening to podcasts with the volume low. She had begun to let herself believe the quiet could last. Then the first photograph appeared online. Her leaving the library with him. Hoodie up, head down. The headline called her Billionaire's Mystery Woman. Another article dug deeper. Old engagement photos with Jeremy, the smiling bride-to-be who must have known what she was doing. A gossip site quoted a parent from her school. She always seemed so normal. Guess we were wrong. The principal had called her in that morning. A kind woman in her 60s, gray hair pinned neatly, voice gentle but firm. We have to think about the children, Isabella. The attention, it's disruptive. No accusation, just concern. Isabella had nodded, throat tight, promising it would pass. She was not sure it would. That evening, she sat on her couch, phone dark. The apartment was small, walls lined with books and children's drawings taped above the radiator. She stared at the screen where another headline had just loaded. Gold digger or genuine? Teacher's past raises questions. Her chest felt hollow. She had rebuilt her life so carefully. Lesson plans, parent conferences, Friday nights with a cup of tea and a good mystery. Now strangers were peeling it apart like old wallpaper. Lucas called. She answered on the third ring. I'm sorry, he said first. My team is pushing back on the outlets. They'll pull the worst stories by morning. It's not just the stories, she whispered. It's the looks at school. The whispers. A second grader asked me today if I was famous. She didn't understand why people were taking pictures outside the gate. Silence stretched. She heard his slow exhale, the sound of a man carrying guilt he had not earned. I never wanted this for you, he said. I thought we could keep it small. We tried, she answered, but the world doesn't stay small when it smells money. She paused. The radiator hissed softly. Outside, the wind pushed against the glass. Maybe we should stop, she said, just for a while until it dies down. Another silence, longer this time. Is that what you want? He asked quietly. Or is that what you think you should want? The question landed gently, like a hand resting on her shoulder. Isabella closed her eyes. She thought of Mateo's blue whale drawing, now pinned above the whiteboard. She thought of Lucas's voice reading a passage from the Titanic book aloud last weekend, soft and steady. She thought of how safe she had begun to feel in his presence, not because of what he owned, but because of how he listened. I don't know, she admitted. Then let me ask one thing, he said. Come to dinner at my house. Meet my family. Let them see you. Let them see us. If they can't accept you after that, we'll decide what comes next. She heard the ache in his voice, not for himself, but for her, for the quiet life she deserved. She looked at the children's artwork on the wall, a stick figure family holding hands under a yellow sun, simple, honest. Okay, she said at last, but if it feels wrong, I walk away. Fair, he answered, and I'll walk with you. She set the phone down. The room was quiet again, only the radiator's low breath and the wind outside. Isabella touched the edge of Mateo's drawing. She did not know what tomorrow's dinner would bring. She only knew she was no longer running from the possibility of being seen. Not perfectly, not completely, but seen enough to matter. Dusk settled over the hills beyond the city, the sky the color of old pewter. The Bennett estate stood quiet at the end of a long gravel drive. Lights warm in the tall windows. The air carried the scent of cut grass and distant pine, the kind of evening that remembered simpler times. Lucas drove slowly up the winding path. Isabella sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, wearing a simple navy dress she had bought years ago for parent-teacher nights. The fabric was soft but plain, the kind that did not demand attention. She had chosen it deliberately. No jewelry, no makeup beyond a touch of balm on her lips. Her hair was down, loose waves framing a face that carried the quiet strength of someone who had rebuilt herself more than once. She breathed evenly, but inside her chest felt like a room with too many doors, all of them half open. The house rose before them, stone and glass, old money wrapped in new lines. Lucas parked in the circular drive. He turned to her. "You can still change your mind," he said softly. She shook her head. "I came this far." They stepped inside. The foyer smelled of polished wood and faint lilies. Catherine Bennett waited in the wide hallway. She was in her late 60s, silver hair swept back neatly, wearing a cream silk blouse and black trousers that spoke of elegance earned over decades. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind, the gaze of a woman who had seen both triumph and quiet loss. She extended a hand, cool and brief. "Welcome, Isabella." "Thank you, Mrs. Bennett." Gabriel appeared from the sitting room. Tall, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, dark hair clipped short, a face carved by years of decisions and doubt. He wore a tailored navy suit, tie loosened slightly, as though he had already decided the evening would require effort. His handshake was firm, his smile thin. Dinner was served in a long dining room, candlelight flickering on silver and crystal. The table was set for 4, the chairs heavy and dark. Catherine sat at one end, Gabriel at the other. Lucas and Isabella faced each other across the expanse of linen. The first questions came gently from Catherine, about teaching, about the children, about the school. Isabella answered carefully, voice steady. Then Gabriel leaned forward. "So," he said, fork paused midair. "A second-grade teacher. Interesting choice for my brother." The word choice carried a quiet edge. "Not many in your position would turn down a private jet for parent conferences." Isabella felt heat rise in her cheeks. She set her fork down. "I didn't know about the jet," she said, "or the money. I knew Lucas. That was enough." Gabriel gave a small laugh, not cruel but disbelieving. "Come now. You expect us to believe a woman in your circumstances? Modest apartment, lingering debt from an old fiancé. Saw nothing but the man?" The room stilled. Isabella looked at him directly. "My fiancé took everything I had saved," she said, words measured. "He promised to help me build something for children who have little art classes, books, small wonders. Then he left with the money and left me with the bills. I've paid them down dollar by dollar, summer school by summer school, because I wouldn't let that define me. I'm not here for Lucas's money. I'm here because he listens when I talk about Mateo's blue whale drawing, because he stayed when I showed up in my worst clothes, because he's kind in ways that cost nothing." Her voice did not rise. It simply held. Catherine was silent, watching. Then she spoke, voice low and clear. "I was a secretary when I met my husband," she said. "No family name, no connections. His parents thought I was beneath him. They said the same things. Gold digger. Opportunist. I cried in the bathroom the first time I heard it. But he chose me. And over 40 years, he proved them wrong." She looked at Isabella. Not with money, with time, with quiet choices. Isabella's eyes stung. She blinked once. Gabriel shifted. "Mother." "Enough," Catherine said gently. "Let her breathe." Lucas had been quiet. Now he set his napkin aside. "I love her," he said. The words were simple, steady. "Not because she fits some idea of what belongs beside me, because she reminds me what matters." He stood, chair scraping softly. "If you can't see that, we won't stay." He offered Isabella his hand. She took it. They walked out into the cool night. The gravel crunched under their shoes. Behind them, the house lights stayed on, warm but distant. In the car, Lucas did not speak at first. Then he said, "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she answered. "You stood by me." She looked out at the dark hills. The wind had died. Stars began to show, faint and steady. She felt something settle inside her, not certainty, not yet, but the beginning of belief that love could be defended not with anger, but with truth spoken plainly. And that, she thought, was enough for tonight. Early April rain tapped gently against the windows of Isabella's apartment, a steady rhythm, like an old clock marking time. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp on the side table. The air smelled of chamomile tea cooling in a mug and the faint damp of spring coming through the cracked window. Outside, the city murmured, distant and patient. Isabella had not seen Lucas in 5 days. The silence between them felt heavy but necessary. She sat on the couch, knees drawn up, staring at the wall where Mateo's blue whale drawing still hung. The colors had faded a little from the sun, but the whale still swam across the paper with childish certainty. She thought of the dinner, of Lucas's hand in hers as they left the big house, of the way he had said, "I love her," without raising his voice. The words had stayed with her, simple and true, like a stone smoothed by years in a stream. Her phone buzzed. Lucas's name. She answered. "I need to tell you something," he said. His voice was low, careful. "Gabriel had you investigated. I didn't know until yesterday. He found the debt, $200,000 from Jeremy. The cards, the loans, all in your name." Isabella felt the air leave her lungs. Not anger first, just a deep, quiet hurt. "He had no right," she whispered. "I know," Lucas said. "I told him that. But Isabella, I want to help, not fix you. Just ease what shouldn't be yours to carry alone. There's a fund we could use. Teacher support. Quiet. No one would know." She closed her eyes. The rain tapped harder. She saw herself 3 years ago, standing in the bank, signing papers she barely understood because she trusted the man beside her. She saw the empty apartment after he left, the envelopes piling up, the nights she lay awake calculating how long she could stretch each paycheck. She had almost sold this place, the small, imperfect home she had fought to keep. Almost. But she hadn't. Because letting it go would have meant letting go of the last piece of herself she still controlled. "No," she said. The word came out firm, though her voice shook. "I won't take your money. Not like that. I've paid every month because I needed to prove I could. To myself. If you pay it, it becomes charity. And I can't live feeling like I owe you for breathing." Silence. Then his breath, slow and ragged. "I'm afraid," he said. "Afraid you'll leave because I can't be enough without the things I own. Afraid I'll lose you before I've really had the chance to know you." The confession landed softly. Isabella felt it settle in her chest, not as a wound, but as a shared truth. She had been afraid, too, of being seen as less, of being pitied, of being loved for what she lacked rather than what she was. "I need time," she said, "to think, to breathe." "Take it," he answered. "I'll wait." She hung up. The apartment was quiet again, only the rain and her own heartbeat. The next morning, she went to school early. The hallway smelled of floor wax and coffee from the teacher's lounge. She found Mateo in the hallway before the bell, sitting alone on the bench outside her room. His backpack was open, papers scattered. He looked smaller than usual. "Hey," she said gently. "What's wrong?" He shrugged. "Mom lost her job. We might have to move." Isabella sat beside him. They talked for a long time. She did not promise miracles. She listened. She told him about times when things felt too big, and how sometimes the smallest step, drawing a picture, reading one page, made the weight lighter. When the bell rang, she hugged him once. He held on longer than usual. That afternoon, alone in the classroom, she thought of Lucas again. Not his money, not his name on buildings, his patience, his quiet fear of not being enough. She thought of Mateo's small hand in hers, and she understood slowly that help did not always mean money. Sometimes it meant standing beside someone while they carried their own load. Madison called that evening. "He's miserable," she said, "but he's not pushing. He's giving you space because he knows what it costs you to trust." "I know," Isabella answered. "He's not Jeremy," Madison added softly. "And you're stronger than you think." Isabella looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The sky was clearing, a thin strip of gold at the horizon. She did not have all the answers, but she felt the beginning of something solid inside her. Not dependence, not fear, but the quiet certainty that love could be steady without being perfect. That she could accept support without losing herself. She picked up her phone, typed one line. "I'm ready to talk." She sent it. Then she sat back, the room quiet around her, the light fading gently. For the first time in a long while, the silence did not feel lonely. It felt like waiting. And waiting, she realized, could be a kind of hope. Late September light poured through the tall windows of Isabella's classroom, turning the walls golden and warm. The room smelled of fresh paper, wax crayons, and the faint sweetness of apples from the children's snack time. Desks stood empty now. The day done. Only the soft creak of the old wooden floorboards breaking the quiet. Isabella had come back to him after 2 weeks of silence. Not with grand declarations. Just a quiet evening on her couch, the rain gone, the windows open to the cool air. She told him she wanted them to build something real. Slowly. Honestly. No money changing hands to solve her problems. No power tilting the balance. She would keep teaching second grade, keep her small apartment for as long as she needed it, keep paying her debts her way. Lucas listened without argument. He agreed. And in the months that followed, he proved it. Not with gestures, but with presence. He came to parent nights. He listened to her stories about the children. He sat beside her on Friday evenings while old podcasts played low, his hand resting near hers, never pushing. She felt the change inside her like spring coming slow after a hard winter. Trust did not arrive all at once. It grew in small, steady ways. His patience when she hesitated, his silence when she needed space, his quiet pride when she made another payment on her own. She began to see that love could stand beside struggle without trying to erase it. That was new. And it mattered. 6 months passed like pages in a well-read book. One afternoon, after the last bell, Lucas waited in her classroom. The children had gone home. Sunlight slanted across the floor in long bars. He wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, sleeves rolled up, no trace of the boardroom. In his hand was a small box. He did not kneel. He simply stood near her desk, opened the box and showed her the ring. Plain gold, a single small diamond, nothing that shouted wealth. "I don't want to buy your future," he said. "I want to share it. And I've started something else." He handed her a folder. Inside were papers for a foundation in her name. Support for victims of fraud, legal help, small grants for teachers rebuilding after loss. "Not to fix your past," he said. "To help others carry theirs. You'll guide it if you want." Isabella looked at the papers, then at him. Tears came, quiet and unhurried. She stepped forward and kissed him. "Yes," she whispered. They married in early spring in the school auditorium. No grand venue. Just folding chairs, paper flowers made by her students, and a handful of people who mattered. Catherine sat in the front row, eyes shining. Gabriel stood beside Lucas, tie straight, face softened by something like regret. He had come to her apartment weeks earlier with flowers and an apology. Not elaborate, just honest. She had accepted it. Not because she had to, because forgiveness felt lighter than anger. Mateo was there, 7 years old now, hair combed for once. He waited until the end, then ran up with a rolled-up drawing. "For you and Mr. Lucas," he said. Isabella unrolled it. A crayon picture. 2 stick figures holding hands under a big blue sky, a whale swimming above them. Below, in careful letters, "Love wins over hard things." She knelt and hugged him. The room was quiet except for the rustle of paper and the soft sound of someone breathing deeply. That night, they sat on the couch in her apartment, still hers for now. The podcast played low, a familiar mystery unfolding. Lucas's arm rested around her shoulders. Isabella leaned against him, the ring catching the lamplight. She looked up at him. "Life isn't a fairy tale," she said softly. "No," he answered. "But honesty makes its own kind of magic." They listened to the story continue. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the room held them gently. No rush. No need to prove anything more. They had learned that love was not the absence of difficulty. It was the choice to walk through it together, hands open, hearts steady, trusting that the quiet moments were enough. And in that quiet, they found something rare. Peace. As the years gently carry us forward, remember this. Love and kindness arrive not in grand gestures, but in quiet presence. Through a hand held, a story shared, a moment of simply being there. In our later years, when health falters, loneliness whispers, and old aches return, the deepest comfort often comes from those who stay, who listen without judgment, who remind us we are still seen and cherished. May you find that gentle companionship in your days ahead. And if this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a kind comment below, and subscribe so we can walk this journey together. God bless you, keep you in good health, ease your burdens, and surround you with love that never fades. You are never alone.